Dragons' third episode is pretty much continuing what the first two have done. I'm curious to see how this full season is going to be structured. I do have screeners, but I've only been getting them the week before, so I'm able to see the coming episode and put together a review, but not where the whole season goes. Sometimes you get the screeners for a whole season of a show, and I generally often don't watch the whole season because I like to review it and watch it with people rather than binging the whole thing on my own and then not having anything to look forward to. I also like to be able to make theories or predictions, and even though I've read the book, there are changes between the show and the book. So what it's been doing is building up, right? The whole first season was building to the Dance of Dragons, this Targaryen civil war. And now the first 3 episodes of season 2 are still doing that. And that's okay. I don't mind that we're sort of building slowly into this, hopefully this crescendo of battle and war and blood and fire. But it is I kind of wonder how long they're going to do this. Basically, we've had sort of this back and forth. At the end of season 1, Lucerys was killed by Aemon's dragon, Vhagar, and then at the beginning of this season, Daemon goes to King's Landing and pays blood and cheese to go kill, a son for a son. I don't think he specified Jaehaerys, but I think that he did make it pretty clear he wanted a son. And they killed a little boy. Then, of course, last week, Criston Cole, the Lord Commander and now the Hand as well, sent Eric Cargyle, I can never pronounce that. I don't know how it's pronounced. Sent Eric to kill his twin, not to kill his twin brother, but to kill Rhaenyra, and he and his brother Eric, ended up fighting to the death. So, this episode, there's nothing quite so dramatic as the murder of a twin. Both the last episodes ended with twins dying. Lots of twins have died. But there is still, obviously, war and strife. It opens with an old feud between the Brackens and the Blackwoods, 2 minor houses in the Riverlands, and it opens with sort of a minor squabble and then cuts to, sometime later when there's been a huge battle between these two under a windmill. Just hundreds of dead, as far as the eye can see. So this is basically the first battle, the first real battle in this war, and there will be many more. Beyond that, again, this is not a particularly dramatic episode in terms of big things happening, but there are some important events. Sir Criston Cole, tired of the sort of endless whining and complaining and talking and bickering in the small council, says that he's going to take a force to the Riverlands to get, the Tullys and all their bannermen onto the side of Team Green. Daemon Targaryen does the exact same thing on the back of his dragon Caraxes and takes Harrenhal without shedding a drop of blood. And at Harrenhal, he meets the witch. He doesn't really meet her, but this is Alice Rivers, a bastard of the Strong household. And she gives him a vision where we see young Rhaenyra, played by Millie Alcock, who we haven't seen since the first half of season 1, stitching together little Prince Jaehaerys' head back to his body. The witch also tells Daemon that he will die in this castle. So a little prophetic doom. Witches generally do that in Game of Thrones. In Westeros, they're always telling people the bad shit that's going to happen. Beyond this, we have Rhaenyra sending off her youngest children with Rhaena, her stepdaughter. Also some eggs, some dragon eggs, and they're going to the Vale. We see her sister Baela spot from her dragon Criston Cole riding alongside Gwaine Hightower, Alicent's brother that we never knew about, who shows up. He's played by Freddie Fox, who you may recognize from Slow Horses. He plays he plays Spider in that. Not the Spider, he's not Varys, but he plays a similar character, kind of an obnoxious, full of himself type character in both shows, it seems. Though we don't get to see a lot of Gwaine, but he's off to go to an inn instead of sleeping with the army, which is, it's not like they were going to the inn, they were passing through the town. He's literally leaving the army. Criston Cole, who I keep finding myself sympathizing with this episode, even though he's a despicable son of a bitch, he's irritated, and then he sees this dragon up above, and he tells them all to ride hard for the trees. So they ride to the forest. Baela spots them, swoops down. It's a pretty cool scene, actually, with them riding to the forest and the dragon swooping down. We haven't gotten any really good dragon scenes yet this season, so that was kind of the closest thing we've gotten so far. We also spot Sea Smoke, the dragon that Laenor Velaryon used to ride before he died, and, waiting to see who ends up claiming that dragon. So we also get our first mention of dragon seeds from Ulf the White, who we meet in a brothel tavern later on in the episode. He's one of these dragon seeds. We'll get to see a lot more of them. We've seen already some of the other ones like Alan and Adam of Hull, as well as Hugh Hammer. So these are all characters, spoilers, but they are bastards of Valyrian descent, either Velaryon or Targaryen descent. So they will play a bigger part later on in this story and in the coming war with all these dragons and whatnot. So beyond this, there's not a whole lot. We get to see more of Aegon. He is trying to go off to war. Like, Aegon has, I think he's an interesting character because he's kind of torn between two sides. Like, he wants to go be brave. He wants to go to battle. He's not a coward, but he's easily convinced away from that. He wants to be good, like we saw in an earlier episode where he was trying to give the sheep back to the shepherd who came to complain about them being taken, but he's easily swayed back by Otto Hightower. And in this episode, he's swayed away from going to war by Larys Strong, who he then makes his Master of Whispers, the role that Varys had in Game of Thrones. So Aegon is always sort of torn. We see it even in that same scene where he's surrounded himself by lackeys. All his Kingsguard are now his friends, and they're not the bravest knights or the best fighters. I mean, honestly, Joffrey and Robert Baratheon had a lot of bad Kingsguard. Like, some of those guys were really, really awful, but they were still trained knights. The people Aegon has surrounded himself with are his drinking buddies, and they want him to go out to the brothels later, and he says, but you've sworn to chastity. And they laugh about that, but he seems really serious about it. So they're like, oh my God, maybe he really means it. Maybe this is not just a walk in the park, But then later he shows up at this tavern and this brothel where this dragon seed is, and he comes in all drunk and boisterous and laughing and causing trouble. Ultimately finding Aemond where he's laying in the lap of this older whore, and he mocks and mocks and mocks Aemond until Aemond leaves. This scene has a lot of dick in it. There's a lot of not just full frontal nudity, but like straight on blowjob happening in this brothel, like I don't think I've ever seen in a non-pornographic film or TV show before. I mean, it's not just like the head of the woman, it's like full on. It's quite graphic. So if you're turned off by pornographic levels of nudity and sex that go beyond anything that I remember in Game of Thrones, that wasn't outright like just terrible, torturous sexual violence, here you go. House of the Dragon is up in the ante. And this on top of the boys. There's a lot of full frontal male nudity on TV right now. So if that's your thing, you're in luck. And if it's not your thing, too fucking bad. Beyond that, I mean, this is not an episode that had a lot of big dramatic things happen, but it does continue to sort of move these pieces along the chessboard as we see, Rhaenyra goes to Alicent to see if she can, if they can work something out, but Rhaenyra doesn't really bring anything to convince Alicent. She's just like, hey, my dad loved me, remember? Can you really want this war to happen? Like, it's going to be bad. But she's not like, I'll let Aegon be king. You make me, something important. Let's talk deep. No, she doesn't bring anything to the table. Rhaenyra just comes, she disguises herself as a nun, she sneaks into the sept, she meets with Alicent where she's lighting her candles, and has no plan, really. Like, I know Rhaenyra's being set up as kind of like the hero of the show, but ultimately I find her to be very impulsive. She's good-hearted, but I think she doesn't think things through, and I think this is going to be a problem for her going forward. She didn't really have a plan with Alicent. The only thing that they really learn is that what Viserys said to Alicent on his deathbed was not anything about Aegon, his son, their son, but about the prince who was promised, this prophesied figure who would unite the clans and save Westeros from some impending doom, who we know is a different Aegon, spoilers for Game of Thrones, Jon Snow. Which just reminds me of how badly they screwed up Game of Thrones. Because, I'm sorry, Jon is the son of Targaryen and Stark, of fire and ice and fire. He is the prince that was promised. They screwed up everything about that whole prophecy and that the whole like trajectory of Jon Snow in the final season, among many other things. And I'm reminded of this when I watch this show and they bring this shit up. But Alicent and Rhaenyra both sort of realize, oh shit, this was just some story that he told. He wasn't referring to Aegon. He wasn't telling her that Aegon should be king. But Alicent's like, sorry, it's too late. Like, this has happened. This is done. And Rhaenyra is upset by this, but again, she doesn't come to the bargaining table with anything to barter. So all the pieces are being moved into place. Daemon's at Harrenhal. Sir Criston Cole and his army are headed that way. The Riverlands are in play, right? Whoever can control the Riverlands is going to have a huge upper hand. Alicent's youngest, Daeron Targaryen, and his dragon are headed from Old Town as well. So we're about to meet another one of the Aegon boys, another dragon, and of course the dragon seeds are also in place. Lots of little moving pieces in this very complex and complicated civil war that's about to, erupt. The 4th episode is apparently called a Dance of Dragons. I guess it was leaked. I'm not sure, but that's what it's showing online. So I'm assuming something big happens. We'll see. I really liked this episode. I find this show, even though it moves pretty slow, and even though there's a lot going on and there's a lot of names to remember, and it's hard to remember how to spell them all when I'm writing about this shit, and it's annoying. And I think if George R.R. Martin had maybe made easier names to spell, he might have finished Winds of Winter by now. But even though there's just so much going on and there's no characters that I love as much as I love Tyrion or, some of the great characters from Game of Thrones, I still really, really like this show. I think it's super well done. So I'm excited for there's 5 more episodes. So we still have quite a lot. These are long episodes. They're dense, long, meaty episodes. And I think shit's going to get crazy pretty soon. So let me know what you thought in the comments. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Thank you so much for watching and for subscribing and for lending your voice to this conversation. I'll catch you next time. Peace.